My scripture today is from the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verses 22 through 25. And I'm reading from the Lamsa translation of the Bible. The fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control. There is no law against these, and those who belong to Christ have controlled their weaknesses and passions. Let us therefore live in the Spirit and surrender to the Spirit. Now, it's important to note that these 9 words for the fruit of the Spirit that Paul talked about in his letter to the Galatians, these are all positive emotions. And positive emotions, like all emotions, are triggers. It's an internal event that switches on or off something in our thinking process. What I'm saying is that as triggers or switches, these 9 emotions, love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control, these emotions have the actual power to influence our state of mind and therefore our experiences in life. Remember, it all begins in the mind. What the mind thinketh, those are our actions. Mind produces results. If only we will let them. So think of the fruits of the Spirit as a sign or an outcome of the work of Spirit, the God within us. Reverend Scott Morgan reminded me last week that it was 10 years ago that he and I completed our 4 years of study at the United Metaphysical Churches in Roanoke in their program, and we became ordained. We actually became ordained in October, so not quite 10 years since ordination, but it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years. It certainly has been both a fulfilling and an interesting time, not only serving AMC, but the church community at large, and being there in a ministerial capacity, some for friends and family. It's been a very rewarding experience for me, and a very important one. It's a gift to be able to serve. But during this time in my ministry, my work has included many things: weddings, funerals, counseling, probably my favorite, pastoral counseling. People have come to me seeking guidance and support, sometimes just someone to talk to. I've worked with families who have lost their loved ones, individuals who have lost their spouses, either through divorce or death, persons who have lost their jobs, people who have lost their physical health abilities, and some have had mental health challenges, and they've lost their memories and their abilities to be able to think and make decisions. And some who have felt just plain lost. They've said, I just feel lost. I just feel a void. And all have shared a common bond and a common struggle. How to move on when life, as they've known it for years, is all of a sudden different. How to deal with it when they no longer feel in control. You see, what really drives the human mind and body is not money or power or fame or sex or not even the will to live. The strongest human drive is our need for control. The need to control our thoughts, our minds, our actions, our decisions in life. And losing control of the ability to do these things is what is most frightening to us. When someone has been self-sufficient and functional their entire life, it's difficult to accept that they're no longer able to be that way. It feels frustrating and embarrassing to be forced suddenly to be dependent on others and unable to take basic care of oneself. Once feelings of control are lost, feelings of helplessness ensue. Some people feel that they'd be better off dead, and they gradually become ready to die, then struggle with conditions which took away their independence and control. Now, this, of course, is the grief talking, and whether you're the person going through it or the family and friends that are right there by their side, grief is what happens when our strongest human drive, control, is lost. It's important to note that grief is a natural and expected part of living. The response to any kind of loss is grief, and we all go through it at some point in our lives. Whether it's the loss of a family member or friend, or the loss of a job, or maybe your home, or maybe it's just the loss of time, realizing that we're getting older, we're aging, and we have to form new ways of doing things. Any kind of loss equates to grief, which is followed by various stages. First, there's the loss of control, then feelings of helplessness. The helpless feeling is commonly resisted by the use of denial. Denial helps for a while until the full realization of the loss hits you like a ton of bricks, and that's when fear and anger usually step in. People become scared and defiant toward others and toward God for the loss that they're experiencing. Then there's the transition to depression as the reality becomes part of your life. A lengthy depression takes so much energy and can become so painful that human beings naturally begin to lean toward a better way to cope. And often that's some sort of bargaining position, as if a deal could be structured with the universe. A search begins for an attitude or a position from which one can begin to accept the reason for the grief. Even if a full recovery never takes place, eventually a stance is found from which enough comfort is derived to finally accept and find some peace with the loss. Some people never resolve their grief. Others can take years. But eventually, most people find a way or develop an attitude that helps them finally put most of the grief aside and move on. Now, there are many coping mechanisms available that can offer short-term relief, but that type of relief usually comes at a hefty price and may cause grief of its own down the road. While drug and alcohol abuse, overeating or anorexia, or any unnecessary risk-taking may all be tempting, always know that when trying to make your life meaningful and positive once again, it's far healthier instead to place your trust in God and in your loved ones. This is where our faith comes into play. We owe it to all those that we love and to God, the God within, to take care of ourselves. We gain little if we become ill in the struggle for control. It's important to remember that even Jesus stopped working miracles and separated himself from the throngs of people surrounding him. The Bible talks often of how he left his followers to be alone, to eat, sleep, and to pray, so that he could feel renewed and offer his best the next day. He had a mission to accomplish, just as we all do here on earth. So we must do what we can without becoming ill. Then we must do what is contradictory to our nature. We must let it go. We do what we can, stay healthy, and then hand our concerns over to God, to let go and to let God. I think this is the toughest part. We have very little training in life in recognizing when we can do nothing more, when we've done all that we can, and trust God for the solution. Trusting takes practice. Giving up control contradicts our nature. Again, this is where our faith comes in. And I think as metaphysicians, we have a little easier time of this than other faith groups. We know that letting go and letting God does not mean that we're handing our problems over to some old man sitting up there on a throne who's looking down and is going to take over for us. We know that God is not personified. God is infinite intelligence, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We live in God. We move in God. We have our being in God. God is not somewhere else, but right here, all around us. God is the encompassing spirit in whom everything that is, is. To let go and to let God is to look at things from a more global perspective, to have faith in the God within, to have faith in ourselves. The road of life is different for each and every human being. And while we all eventually learn to be socially adept and economically responsible individuals, our training rarely prepares us for the series of difficult and life-changing events we all face at one time or another during our lives. During these challenging times, it's often our faith, our relationship with the higher power, that helps get us through these dark days. So how do we do it? How do we let go and let God? Well, first of all, remind yourself that it's one day at a time. It doesn't happen overnight. Identify what you can control and what you can't. Address what you can control. Surrender what you can't control. Meditate on the promises of your faith in God and resolve to act not on fear, but on faith. Begin the process with this healing affirmation. I am willing to let go and let God handle it all. I acknowledge there is a presence and power beyond my understanding, ready to work through me as I let go. I know that by myself I can do nothing, but with God all things are possible. I am willing to let go and let God handle it. It's important for us to remember that God's infinite wisdom is available to us at all times. As you begin to let go of trying to control challenges, remember that this does not mean that you're shirking your responsibilities, your part in the process. Rather, it means that you're courageously facing these challenges with a new awareness of your partnership with God, and that you're mindful of God's presence and power within you. It means that you're beginning to accept that you can handle whatever confronts you because of the solid foundation of God's Spirit within you. Remind yourself again and again, I am willing to let go and let God. If there's some action to take, some word to speak, some truth to know, it will be revealed and accomplished through the guidance of God. You will find that you are not alone, that God's love is continually at work for your highest good. If doubts persist, respond to each negative thought or feeling with the same affirmation. I am willing to let go and let God help me. God is the source. You are the channel. Know that with God, you can handle anything and everything. Letting go and letting God sometimes means finding new ways of helping yourself to the peace you earnestly desire, or listening to the guidance that comes to you. It may be simple nudges or quiet urgings. The universe sends us many different types of signs in many different types of ways. And remember that if you ever thought that the only way that you can receive help is the way that you've always done so in the past, know that that's not always the case. We need to be open to new ways of discovering the good that we seek. As a child of God, you are always in a state of unfolding consciousness. Therefore, you can be confident that it's all right to change your direction and move forward when you're following guidance from the Spirit within. Remember, we always have the free will to look at things from a new perspective. Let go and let God. Know that in doing so, you're making room within your heart for the presence and power of the Creator to come into expression. Trust this wonderful presence of love. I read again Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 through 25. The fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, self-control. There is no law against these. And those who belong to Christ have controlled their weaknesses and passions. Let us therefore live in the Spirit and surrender to the Spirit. And I would add that if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Since we are living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. Let us learn to let go and let God, and may it be so.